Alright, so Michael McCreary was talking about holding the door open. I used to hold the door open for everybody. That's what I was taught. You hold the door open. I was also taught that because I grew up in the system, mind you, I was taught that you ask before entering a room and you ask before leaving a room. There's a lot of rules that you guys don't grow up with, like no touching rule. You're not going to learn how to wrestle in the system. And sure, somebody's going to say, oh, well, there's a special boys' home in Tennessee or something that they do that, or in Nebraska or Wyoming or something where they do that. But yeah, when you're in Colton Boys and Girls Home, or you're in Pine Ridge Job Corps Center, or Centennial Peaks, or Fairfax, Clearview, it's all the same rules. You're not allowed to touch each other. A lot of the social norms that I exhibit are not social norms that you guys are used to because they come from the system, or they come from being homeless. A lot of the terms that I use, they're homeless terms that are used differently than many of you use it. It's local lingo, or occupational lingo, if you want to call it that. I get to see the dirtiest of the dirty kids. I get to meet all of the people with the worst problems that most of you will never understand, and I see how much anxiety you guys are going through with the worries that you have, but believe me when I tell you that it's much easier to keep it than it is to get it to begin with. You got to have all your ducks lined up in a row. For me, I have to have the right environment in order to function. I've had that problem my entire life. When I'm in positive places, I do extremely well. When I'm in places where people are negative or they're doing a bunch of illegal stuff, it creeps me out. And that gives me a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear because I already know what happens to those kind of people. And guilt by association, and a lot of that cruelty. And I had to learn you guys' social norms a bit differently. I had to learn through storybooks, and I had to learn through psychology books and through classes that are specifically designed to help people who have been through a lot of trauma, a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of physical abuse, parents who are on drugs, things of that nature. Most of the kids in the system are not in there because they're bad kids. They're in there because their parents couldn't stay off the drugs, or they couldn't keep their hands to themselves. Most of the kids in the system are there because of things that their parents chose. For some of them, it's the fact that their parents chose not to have kids, and after they were born, those people never had contact with them again. So these kids grow up in foster homes and group homes, and they deal with a lot of abuse in there from other foster kids, oftentimes the foster parents, and you guys are getting to see all the things I've been speaking about playing out on the news recently. This comedian, he does what I used to do, which is make light of it. But when the fight came to me as hard as it did, I had no choice but to defend myself the only ways that I had. And I tried to learn it to do that the way that you guys expect me to. But I need someone to show me how to do those things, or I need a quiet environment where I can sit down and take the time that it might take me to learn something. Once I learn how to do it, I'm better than anybody else at it. But I have to learn how to do it first. And if I'm in an environment with a lot of stress, I feel that stress. It's also the fact that I pick up on a lot of people's emotions because of their body language just naturally. Especially when people are hostile. I can't tell if somebody's interested in me, but I could definitely tell when somebody's not. And me, I'm just not interested in anybody. And I don't mean that as an insult. I just have noticed that people get mean over stupid things, like sex boils the brains. Just the thought of sex boils people's brains. And that's a lot of the classes that we went through when I was growing up. And this is no funny matter. This isn't something to laugh about. This is something that you guys talk about doing something about. You talk about castrating these people and, ending their lives and things of that nature. And I'm like, but you're not doing that. At least I'm exposing them. But also, it's their environment too. Many of these abusers, it's because they're scared too. They are scared. Rihanna and the kids, yeah, they were scared of her, she was scared of them, and I was scared of all of them. The right environment, if somebody's drinking and they're volatile because they're drinking, I'm not going to be comfortable there. And if kids are being hit, I'm definitely not going to be comfortable there, but I need to do something. When I was at Sally Treon's, I let Jerry Sparks know that little girl got kicked in the face. I was hoping Jerry would do something about it, because the cops won't listen to me, and that's the point. It's not me who has the issue, it's you guys and your unwillingness to try to understand. Everything has to be your way. You have your ideas in your head of how it is for others in situations that you've never been in. And you think you know everything. You think you know all the details, and you don't. So many of the people who wanted to help me couldn't because of distance, because of finances, because they have children. They have to keep their children safe, or they have a spouse that's arguing with them, and after all the news that I was on, they don't want that being used in court. But I told y'all what would happen if I started turning in the predators. I said that well before Natalie died. It's because I learned about human nature. You can't change human nature. Mob mentality is based on human nature. How to manipulate people's emotions. That's how you control the mob. Now, there's the other way of doing it, and that's through education. See, that's the other side of the brain even. The reasoning side of the brain. If you can educate someone, if you can get them to sit down in a classroom and be quiet long enough to listen and understand, things are a lot different. And you should think of it like a classroom. If you're a doctor, yes, you should have at least one teacher to come in there at least one day during one of your classes and tell you what it's like to have cancer, what it feels like, what chemo is like. Not just read it out of a textbook. If you want to help the homeless, my only real qualification for that is you better have been unhomeless. If you're in charge of helping out the homeless and you've never been homeless, you're not going to do anyone any good whatsoever. If you want to treat people with Asperger's or autism, then you definitely need to do you some learning. When I was at Ken and Leah's, a lot of people say that people with autism are violent. Well, that depends. Asperger's is a specific spot on the spectrum. High intelligence, social awkwardness, Those are kind of the earmarks. But the issues of autism are still there, like having to move a lot really disrupts our ability to think and comprehend what's going on in an effective way. It's not that we don't comprehend it, it's that it's all coming in at once. We're a sponge for our environments and we learn everything about it quickly, but there's a lot of stuff to learn about an environment. And it's easier with structure. When Ken and Leah's son was violent, as they called it, well, let me tell you how it worked. One of the times I was in there, that young man was cutting up something on a breadboard, something to eat. And Ken came in looking for a fight. So he accused that young man of coming at him with a knife. No, he set the knife down. That young man set that knife down off to the left-hand side of him on a shelf that was full of all the boxes of stuff, oatmeal and everything like that. And Ken proceeded to take him down to the floor in a headlock. It was uncalled for and unnecessary. He's blunt. He's not an asshole, he's blunt. But he will be an asshole if you're going to be an asshole to him. And Ken and Leah have a lot of really bad assumptions. They do the same thing that my dad does. They go through and they learn a whole bunch of stuff about autism, or they should be, but really all they're doing is looking through for the parts that they can use to make it all his fault. It's his fault because he's autistic. Well, no, it's not. How you treat people who are autistic is what the problem is. Their son isn't retarded. And I saw Ken and Leah both approach him in very, very undesirable ways. Not just for somebody who's autistic, and not just somebody with PTSD, not just somebody who's been in a domestic violence situation. That's the wrong way to approach anybody. And their automatic go-to with him is that attitude. When I got there, I treated him like a human being. She was having issues because he didn't know how to hug. He stuck his arms straight out in front of him, and she looked at him and, asked him what the fuck he was doing. But, I got to see that young man give his mom a hug. I was able to explain things to him that, like that Mr., let me see what his name is, that comedian. Michael McCreary. It's difficult to make everything funny. And sometimes you need positivity in your life. Sometimes you need to have fun. I mean, if you can't have fun, what the hell is there to life? What are you here for? You just gonna work and die and that's what you're supposed to do? But it's difficult to have fun when people have different interests than you. If you're not interested in drugs and that's how people pass the time, then you're just boring to them. If people's special interest is watching TV and you don't like watching TV, you like video games during that period of time instead, well, you're doing something wrong, right? Because it's not their interest, it's yours. Imagine how Peaches would have felt if I'd absconded with her TV to watch TV while she was playing video games. Just not cool. So I like that guy. He's a good comedian and I think he does get the point across. With a lot of the things that I did that were crazy, it was because I feared for others. I feared for others because I didn't have all the information and I didn't have the help that I needed. People didn't understand what was going on. And the ones who could understand what was going on all had reason to fear. Fear the mentality of others, like the mentality of a small town. How Boulder, Colorado and Chapel, Nebraska were the two places that I knew. Two places where I somewhat felt at ease. And I couldn't go to either one of them after Natalie died without having my life threatened. Not just Boulder. When Tim Beeson, Natalie's ex-boyfriend, first started threatening me, that was well before Natalie died, but he wasn't even the first person to do it. He was just the first person to be that blatant about it that I could positively connect with Natalie. Before that, everybody was connected to Maddie. Most of them I didn't know because when I met them, it was basically, who the hell is that dude? Is he old enough to hang out here? No? Then he needs to not hang out in my group. When somebody is abducted, most of the time it's one of the parents. It's that 1% of the time that it's not that you need to be afraid of, right? No, it's the parents. When a child is molested, 80% of the time it's one of the parents, usually the dad. There's even more percentage that's assorted other family members, but it's that 1% that isn't somebody you know that you really gotta be afraid of, right? That's just fucking crazy. These are things that there's nothing funny to be said about it. It just hurts. And a lot of people adopt that cold-hearted mentality as their personal motto. Mine was do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But when I thought, what's the right thing to do, I always thought, how would I want to be treated? What are the issues that I'm having that a lot of people that I know seem to be having? Well, I pretty much stay within one social class. So I know what that social class has issues with, but I have no representatives. I'm in the same category in most people's minds as someone with Alzheimer's, dementia, schizophrenia. That's just crazy. Bipolar is usually somebody who has had repeat sensory overload issues and they're barely holding it together. Normal people don't act like that. Well, you know what? There's no such thing as normal people. Everybody reacts to things differently, and some people just have to take more of it than others, usually over the opinions of others. I wasn't an asshole unless I had to be. And the only time I was an asshole was when somebody else's life was in danger. Even if I perceived it wrong, the fact is, because of the way the situation presented itself and the parties involved, yes, anybody would think that. And somebody has to say something. Anna Moomin, she's one of my favorite YouTubers on autism. There's another one named Anja Melissa, A-N-J-A Melissa, and there's one more. Pause this. It's called the Aspie World. TheAspieWorld. The problem with people with Asperger's is that it's not us that are getting violent. It's you guys getting violent with us, backing us into corners, scaring the hell out of us. And you do that to us more so than you do to most. When somebody does that to you, I see how you react. It's not how you tell us to react. You punish us for reacting the way that you do. That's your problem, not mine, right? Whatever people think, that's their problem, not your problem, Sean. Well, really? How they treat me is based on what they think. I understand how people work too well. A lot of people with Asperger's do. We understand your motivations. We just don't understand why those are your motivations. We could live in a much better world if we were just good to each other. We want to make sure nobody's getting nothing for free. And then we have to government subsidize who's getting free stuff from who. And they have to earn a certain amount in order to get that help. And they have to not earn a certain amount to get that help. Oh yeah, and everything you sign says you got the possibility of prison if you fuck something up. If you get a piece of information incorrect, or if you don't know the answer. Oh yeah. And for me, reading that stuff, I'm like, that could be taken 5 or 6 different ways. How are they taking it? Sometimes I go back through the stuff that I typed, and I see how I typed it, and I'm like, I understand how they took it.